Are live. What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Bunker Office Hours, a weekly live show brought to you by the team at Bunker Labs, a national network of veteran and military spouse entrepreneurs dedicated to helping the military connected community start their own business. I'm your host today, Iron Mike Stedman, joined by my co-host Amy Morton and our special guest today, Eric Bronner from the Veterans for Political Innovation. What's going on, Eric and Amy?
Howdy.
Hi, thanks for having me, Iron Mike.
So before we talk to our guest today, Amy's going to go ahead and talk about what's going on in the bunker over the next few weeks.
Thanks, Mike. Yep, we got a couple events coming up next week, actually. We got a Bunker Connect in Newark, Mike's home, on October 14th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And then also same day, October 14th, we've got a Bunker Connect in Indianapolis, Indiana. That is 6 p.m. Central Time. And then big reminder, veterans and residents applications still open. Push that deadline a little bit through October 8th. So get your apps in today. Do not miss this extended deadline because y'all don't want to miss this cohort. For more information on the veterans and residents or our events, check out bunkerlabs.org.
Yes, y'all see I'm rocking my veterans and residents shirt. I feel like I'm a veterans and residents OG from 2018 back in the first cohort. So it's a great program. And again, the only way we're able to have programs like this is if we spread the word and really get it out to our community to take advantage of these great opportunities. And the same thing for these connects. Now, Amy said Bunker Connect is in Newark. So I look up the address, but it's actually like an hour away. But it's all right. They're trying to steal a little bit of Newark branding. I get it. But anyways, it's not about that today. Today, it's about our guest, Mr. Eric Bronner from the Veterans for Political Innovation. Eric, how about you take a moment and introduce yourself to those tuning in today?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And a quick shout out to Bunker Labs. I'm a part of the Veterans and Residents Program cohort 21 Bravo right now. Chicago cohort. It's been an amazing experience. I can't recommend it highly enough. So I'm so grateful to the Bunker community, Mike, to you and others for this opportunity. I'm a 46-year-old Navy guy, former Navy guy. I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I now live in St. Louis, Missouri. And after practicing law for a minute and a little bit of real estate, and then having a little bit of a midlife crisis, what do I want to do when I grow up? My mission that I found is cross-partisan political reforms, trying to make our American democracy healthier and more competitive. And I've turned that into a full-time job with Veterans for Political Innovation.
Can you explain what what your mission is?
Yes, our mission for Veterans for Political Innovation is to make our system less toxic and more competitive by mobilizing veterans and supporters to advocate for election innovations.
So one thing I'm gonna do is, I know people hear the word politics and everybody starts to freak out, but we're also focused on the entrepreneurial aspect of it. And at our core, entrepreneurs are coming up with products and services to solve solutions, to create solutions for problems within our economy. And so, one of the things you and I were talking about in this pre-interview is the fact of, for the entrepreneurial community, what takes place in DC will affect us. People are worried about whether or not they're going to get paid if the federal government shuts down. A lot of the fastest growing veteran-owned businesses, right, tend to be consulting services that support the federal government as well. So there is an entrepreneurial aspect to this, and we just want to make that clear for our listeners.
Absolutely, Mike. An unstable, gridlocked government is not good for anyone, right? And there are reasons why we have this partisan gridlock that we find ourselves in over and over again. And thankfully, there's actually some solutions that if we, the people, rise up and the good people, the reasonable majority kind of step off the sidelines and get activated, we can make the system work better for everyone.
Can you talk to us about some of the ways you're introducing innovation into the political system?
Sure. And I'd like to mention, so a lot of the ideas that we're trying to implement come from this book, The Politics Industry, based on some groundbreaking research. It came out in 2020. Wisconsin businesswoman Catherine Gale and then Harvard Business School professor Michael Porter wrote the book. And Catherine had the novel idea of taking Professor Michael Porter's 5 forces framework and saying, what if I apply that to the politics industry? What would we learn? What they discovered is it's a classic duopoly, right? Controlled by 2 major parties that don't want real innovation and they don't want real competition. So that's the problem. Then what are the solutions that we're working on? The solutions are a couple innovations. One, she calls it Final 5 voting. And it's a system where you have an open primary, so a single ballot primary, regardless of party, red, blue, green, no party at all. You all run on one ballot in the primary election, and then the top 5 go on to the general in November, where we use ranked choice voting to rank them 1 to 5. So how nice would that be to have 5 viable choices in November instead of saying, man, do I really have to choose between the lesser of 2 evils again?
What is the power of leveraging the veteran network to bring innovation to the industry?
It's incredibly important, right? Because poll after poll shows that veterans, by and large, are still trusted messengers, right? We are one of America's last trusted institutions. One of the reasons why we're seeing this kind of partisan gridlock and breakdown is we no longer really have trusted referees or trusted institutions. So if we can mobilize one of America's most trusted institutions to help repair some of our least trusted institutions, we're going to see some real change. And that's what Veterans for Political Innovation is about.
Yeah, and I want to expand upon that too, because, one of the things I'll tell you is that, in the military, we have a tactical advantage of reaching across the aisle, right? Very few people have the same kind of interpersonal relationships with so many different diverse groups.
Yep.
You see a Black guy, a Mexican, a Puerto Rican, and a white guy all riding a train. One's got cowboy boots on, one's got a fitted hat from New York, and you can instantly tell they're all in the military, because just in everyday life, you just don't see those kind of groups just kind of coming together and moving together. And so I do think there's real power when you have such a diversity of thought of people who kind of understand each other, and we're able to actually capitalize upon that and leverage that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, Mike. And I mean, all of us have stories, right, where families, friendships are being torn apart over politics, which is just heartbreaking, right? Because we're all on the same team. We're all on Team America. Every single veteran swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. I've told people, I think some of the greatest threats to our Constitution right now, partisan gridlock and some of the partisan extremism that we're seeing more and more of.
You describe it as toxic, and you guys weren't afraid to put toxic in what you're targeting. Talk to us a little bit more about that, because, you talk about the mental health piece. Obviously, the situation that happened in Afghanistan, a lot of veterans struggling from that. And then when you see such bickering and back and forth, it does really create a kind of toxic environment. So I want to hear about what you guys are doing to get rid of that.
Yeah, so it's all about changing the incentives in our system, because right now, the way we do our elections incentivizes really terrible, toxic behavior, right? So when we experience a national tragedy like Afghanistan or like 9/11 or something more recent, instead of coming together, we just want to assign blame right away. We want to divide into camps. And it's not even just about my team winning. It's about making the other team lose and look really bad. That's what our politics has become. That's because of the way we do our primary elections, where we divide people and say, choose the Republican ballot or the Democrat ballot. And in the 2020 election, Mike, 10% of eligible voters elected 83% of our Congress. So that's the problem we're trying to solve, right? Where you have this really small percentage of people electing the vast majority of our Congress. And so that's who they cater to. That's who our leaders are catering to, is kind of the most extreme partisan voices. So it's all about changing the incentives to point us back into collaboration and working together to solve problems.
One of our viewers wants to know, how can we overcome all the money in the system that preserves the status quo? Because obviously you got the super PACs, you got all of this kind of stuff. You've got people trying to influence politics for their own financial gain. How do you plan to overcome that?
So at the risk of sounding like I'm passing the buck, so campaign finance reform and money in politics is a huge problem, right? There's people who are way smarter than me that have studied this and said it is probably the toughest problem to solve, because anytime we come up with a solution for money in politics, the money just goes around it. The money flows like water around a broken dam. So it's extremely important, but our theory of change is we need to change the way we elect our leaders first, so we can get better elected officials who are more responsive to a broad range of the people instead of the most extremes. And then we can start having conversations about campaign finance reform, gerrymandering, redistricting, all that other stuff that needs to be fixed as well. But that's just not our primary mission for Veterans for Political Innovation.
What has the demand been like for VPI?
So we're a brand new organization, right? We haven't even been on the scene for more than 6 months, but we're getting a really, really positive, encouraging response from veterans from all over the country, all over the political spectrum, who are saying, man, I'm so glad there's a way to engage in a nonpartisan way, in a way that's going to change the system itself, where I can get activated and I can do something that is unifying and creates a healthier system for everyone. So it's been a really positive response, but we're still young. We're young, scrappy, and hungry.
What is the plan to continue to build out the community around it?
So we're going to mobilize state by state, right? And we're kicking off our first public launch event is going to be in Madison, Wisconsin, next week, Wednesday, October 13th. It's public, open to the public, free event. I got my amazing co-founders, Todd Connor, Dan Biga will be there, along with some great Wisconsin veterans, Dick Leinenkugel, and many others. And the reason we're starting in Wisconsin is because there's a bill pending there for something called Final Five voting. It was introduced by 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats, and 3 of them are veterans. And this is the innovation that we are most excited about, because it's going to make the biggest impact on changing the system for good.
I'm willing to bet a lot of people are interested in kind of having these conversations with people that they can trust, because, one of the challenges now is that you can't even have a conversation without screaming at each other. Now, as veterans, some of us can sit down and be cordial, but the rest of the world, at least the rest of America, is not so much, especially when you look at what's going on in the media. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there just to kind of have really good, honest discussions, and seeing, what kind of solutions people in their local community are coming up with.
Yep. Absolutely, Mike. I mean, I said this before the show, right? I'm a bridge builder by heart. My family is divided politically speaking. I grew up in Milwaukee in a pretty blue family. My wife grew up in southeastern rural Missouri in a very red family, right? And to your point, people hear, oh, Eric works for Veterans for Political Innovation. As soon as they hear the P word, they're like, man, I don't want to talk to that guy. But if I can find ways to build bridges to my family members and say, look, there is a way for us to engage in a way that will bring our country together and make the system work better for everyone, then that makes me feel like I'm maybe have a chance.
Yeah, I always think about this, right? We always hear these terms, economy and politics and all this kind of stuff. At the end of the day, we're all just trying to figure out how to live with each other and how not to kill each other, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people, a lot of civilizations that had it far worse than we do. And that's really all it's about. It's just figuring out, like, how do we all live with each other? How do we make this thing work?
Absolutely. And we generally want the same things, right? We want good education for our kids. We want good healthcare. We want safe places to live. We can disagree about how to get there, but what's happened, Mike, in our current system and the politics industry itself, which, by the way, is a $15 billion industry in the 2020 election cycle, there's too many people that are using fear-based divide and conquer tactics to sell more ads, to raise more money, And we are buying this stuff hook, line, and sinker. And there's outside forces that are literally trying to tear our country apart. And they love seeing how divided we are politically and how much we hate people from the red team or the blue team. We need to stop. Enough is enough, right? Like we need to stop and be smarter than the people that are trying to tear us apart.
No, absolutely. And I talk to buddies about this all the time. Is like, what extent are we going to chase profit at where it rips apart our country, where it creates so much divide? And, we've got to be able to see the train going off the tracks,
Yep.
And jump in front of it and stop it. And it sounds like, that's what you guys are doing at VPI. So I want to recap real quick. Again, one of the reasons that we're talking about this is there's a large percentage of veteran entrepreneurs who benefit from a stable government.
Yep.
All entrepreneurs really benefit from a stable government. And so these are real problems and real issues that are affecting people's bottom lines.
Yep.
And so it sounds like, the work that you all are doing is meant as a solution to address this, which is going to help veteran entrepreneurs and military spouses in the long run.
Absolutely. It's a huge reason why we're doing this. Also, according to some polls, up almost 50% of veterans self-identify as independent or unaffiliated voters, which means in 13 states, they don't even get to participate in primary elections. So we're trying to bring awareness to the fact that our current system doesn't allow veterans like me to fully participate. And that's one of the reasons why we've divided into these kind of more extreme camps.
So, Eric, how can people get involved? What are the next steps for them if they want to learn more about, your program and how they can support? Because it sounds like you're on to something, and we want to make sure as a community, we push support your way.
Yeah, thanks so much. So we have some big announcements this week. Veterans for Political Innovation. Please go check out our website. It's a mouthful. The quickest way to get there is pi.us is our shorthand for the website. But this week we're announcing Todd Connor as our new CEO. Todd's he was the founder of Bunker Labs. He's an amazing person, a charismatic leader. And Todd would say this is the mission of our moment. There is an urgency that all of us are feeling because some polls and research are showing that we have not been this divided as a country since 1860. And so we either need to come together and implement some of these reforms, or this train of American democracy is going to go completely off the tracks. So please go to our website, click the Take Action button, and join us today.
Y'all heard them. Head over to the website. We'll be sure to post the link in the chat. And at this point, I want to ask anybody that's viewing, if you got any questions for Eric, please go ahead and put those in the chat. And in the meantime, Eric, we're going to give our book reviews. So show up your book again.
Yep, here it is, The Politics Industry. It's fantastic, 2020 book, so it's brand new. It's a great read, very well written. It diagnoses all the problems, and it actually presents some viable solutions.
Love it. And my book plug for today is actually an audio book, and it is a physical book, but I'm listening to audio. It is called, let me see it, Start Small, Stay Big, a developer's guide to launching a startup. So I'm going to tell y'all, I've stumbled upon this indie community. They call it indie entrepreneurs. So these are the bootstrappers. Typically, they start tech platforms, but they're not taking on a venture capital. So they have a whole community out there of how they're supporting each other. It's almost like open source entrepreneurship. They call it built in public. And there's this whole community. And one of the reasons I like this community, and particularly I like this book, is it was written by a guy named Rob Walling, who started a podcast called Startups for the Rest of Us. And if you're a bootstrapped entrepreneur, right, you have to basically have a market first approach, and really all entrepreneurs need a market first approach, but you hear this talk about product market fit. But if you're a bootstrapper, you can't afford to wait for product market fit. You need to find a market where people are already spending money and position your product in that niche and position your product in that industry by carving out your own niche. And the idea behind it is, rather than sitting in a puddle of standing water, you want to catch a wave. So you want to ride a wave that's already going, own a niche, and start generating some revenue. And it's a really, really nice little book. One things that we don't talk about as much in the veteran, entrepreneurial, and military spouse space is going to market. We've got tons of programs that'll get you started, teach you about business, etc. But when it comes to the contact sport of business, where you got to launch and grow, especially that first, 10 customers, that first 100 customers, we tend to skip over that. And so that's why I like this book, is it really kind of guides you on how to do that, how to reach profitability and build a business you want. So check it out. Again, Start Small, Stay Big by Rob Wallen. Highly recommend it. And I'll probably cover it in a newsletter here soon. So before we roll off, Eric, I want to leave you with the final words to our viewers before I wrap us up and plug the Transition Podcast.
Thanks, Mike. I'm going to close with a quick story from my college roommate. Was a man named Clint Bruce. He played All-American linebacker for Navy, went on to be a Navy SEAL. We were roommates for 4 years. I would be complaining about stuff, and Clint, in his thick Texas accent, would say, he'd mispronounce my last name, and he'd say, "Broner, what are you going to do about it?" Which I always kind of hated. I just wanted to complain, right? But so my call to action to everyone who's listening, please stop complaining about how bad our politics is and how toxic it is. Please get off the sidelines and come join VPI today. Come implement these election innovations that are going to make our system healthier and more competitive. And it's going to help fix our system and help us pass on the country that all of us want and deserve. So that's my call to action. Stop complaining, take action.
I love it. I'm writing a newsletter today, and I'd already wrote in it before I jumped on of, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So that's what they used to tell us in the Marines. So don't be part of the problem, be part of the solution.
Amen.
I want to, for everyone that's tuning in today, I want to make sure that we acknowledge our sponsors, which make office hours possible. And that's the MetLife Foundation and the Gannett Foundation. The MetLife Foundation is committed to supporting veteran and military spouse entrepreneurs. In addition, the foundation also provides mentorship and financial health resources to veterans and military spouses transitioning into the workforce. A Community Thrives is a program funded by the Gannett Foundation and is part of the USA Today network, which invests in community building initiatives across the country with the goal of creating positive change through service to historically marginalized or under-resourced groups. So thank you to our sponsors for today. And if you haven't done so already, make sure y'all are listening to the Transition Podcast. We're putting out great content. We're releasing an episode week over week. I mean, the last 2 weeks, I got Michelle Warner on there to talk about the 5 stages of small business growth. If you're in the hustle, this is a podcast you want to listen to. And then more recently, last week, I released a podcast episode with Keith Alanis and Kimberly June from milspouse to have a conversation on Afghanistan amongst veteran entrepreneurs. Now, obviously, this is a sensitive subject. And one of the things we do here at Bunker Labs is we try not to comment on things unless we can add some contribution from our support of entrepreneurship. And milspouse is a venture that gets spices from Afghanistan to the rest of the world. And so they're really close to the situation. And so we had them on just to have a open and honest conversation amongst our community. So I want to encourage you all to check that out. And if you subscribe to the newsletter, I release a newsletter twice a week, once on Tuesday with some tips and advice in your ventures, and then on Friday mornings where I share the latest podcast episode. So make sure you check those out. And until next time, everyone, we appreciate you all for tuning in. Have a great rest of your week. Peace, love, and see you all next time.